Hello and welcome to the Microlise podcast. I'm your host, Matthew Summers. I'm the head of global marketing for Microlise. I'm here today with Richard Turfitt, the senior traffic commissioner, and today we're talking about risk, safety and compliance. So Richard, would you be able to introduce yourself, your role and your experience in the industry?
Thanks, Matt. Richard Turfitt, currently senior traffic commissioner, or at least for the next couple of months. Also traffic commissioner for the East of England. I've been in the role longer than I care to remember. I think it may be 17 or 18 years. Before that, I was a health and safety prosecutor. Okay. So safety's been in my practice for quite some time.
And you've obviously just taken part of the risk, safety and compliance webinar that we've just done in partnership with Motor Transport. Mm-hmm. And what was kind of the key takeaways from your point of view? Was there any bits of information that were news to you in your role, and anything that you kind of want to bring back to your own organisation?
News. I think I was struck by how kind of consistent the messages were from various different sources. Key takeout, I think probably drivers are such a key asset. So we need to treat them in that way. Like any other asset that belongs to an operator, a transport business, you need to protect it, you need to invest in it, and you also need to assess the risks associated with that element. And
do you see that kind of varying throughout your kind of relationship with the number of different operators in terms of scale of that business, investing into their driver workforce, as well as down to the smaller operators, again, those local heroes?
Obviously, the larger the number of drivers you've got, the wider that challenge is. We're all individuals, even commissioners are human, and that presents issues for that particular business. I think each business knows their drivers best. They know the risks associated with their business. They know the activities that they're being engaged to undertake. So, yes, I mean, more drivers, bigger challenge, but it's essentially the same challenge which you have to meet. It's managing human behaviour.
And from those, wide array of different size operators and different sectors within transport and logistics, what are the most common reason operators end up before the traffic commissioners?
In a couple of words, poor management.
Right.
You know what you're getting into. The operator licence regime, there are no mysteries about it. You sign the declaration to get the benefits of an operator's licence, and you sign up to the responsibilities, the conditions, the undertakings on the operator's licence, and they're there from day one. So you build that into your processes, you build that into your risk analysis and your control measures.
And do you see that, where do you see compliance then failing around that, process, culture or within the leadership teams of those businesses and operators?
I think it's very easy to be flippant about it, to just discard it as, it's poor management. But look, we're in a very difficult trading environment where margins on, particularly around goods operators, are very tight. I understand that there are times where directors, their attention gets drawn away to things like financial viability, where the next work's coming from, future planning, whether to invest in new vehicles, new ways of working. But understand, again, that operator's licence is at the heart of your transport business. So you've got a plan to try and keep it. Most standard operators, all standard operators are required to have a transport manager. Transport manager can be a bit like your conscience, sort of just tapping you on the shoulder and reminding you, think about the operator licence requirements. Without that licence, we can't carry on in business.
So do you think there's a mixture of, the use of technologies coming into a fleet operator's environment, as well as then that cultural focus as from a leadership point of view?
Yeah, I mean, technology offers you tools to help you manage your risks, help you keep an eye on, better manage your finance, better manage your fuel efficiency, manage the hours of your drivers. But it still comes back to, you're not abdicating that responsibility for management to the IT. You've still got to be in control as a director and a transport manager.
And do you think there's any kind of practical steps operators can take so they don't end up in front of the traffic commissioners as part of their day in the life of?
Yeah, I think the best bit of advice is get some key performance indicators that align with the operator license requirements. You can add to it with that'll help your business, but so long as you have KPIs that meet the operator license requirements, there should be those lines of reporting so that if adverse incidents happen, they don't come as a big surprise to you. I've lost track of the number of public inquiries where sort of a director of a transport business ends up before me and just doesn't really understand why they're there. Right. Well, that does kind of illustrate the point. They haven't been keeping an eye on what they needed to do, what they needed to take responsibility for.
And do you think that's a kind of a general kind of lack of visibility within their own business, and maybe the leadership team's not understanding the importance of providing visibility to the rest of their workforce around those key metrics, those key performance indicators, as you mentioned?
I think most operators, there are the exceptions right at the extreme ends, but most operators want to comply with the operator's license requirements. They just simply lose sight of it for a while, or they get pressured into a point where they're close to breaking point. But there's no excuse. The operator's license is the one rule book. It's the basic requirements below which you're not really safe. You're certainly at risk of undercutting your competitors. And we can't allow that because that's the level playing field. That's the foundation for our safe transport in this country. And we do pretty well in terms of statistics.
And what advice would you give operators about building that culture of risk management and being proactive around it? What kind of mix of advice would you provide?
Don't treat transport as though it's something separate. I think I've been struck by often operators are looking for binary answers, yes or no. It's not like that. There are risks that are inherent to your business that you really understand. There are elements, control measures, which are probably pretty unique to your business. You can use the guidance that's available, use the technological tools which are available, but essentially it comes down to the strength of your own management and you understanding your business.
So that mixture of technology and culture, when you look at the operators and those leadership, what can they do better to support their transport managers so that they aren't set up to fail, in short?
Communication. I've mentioned KPIs, but it's just a paper report if you're not genuinely communicating and listening and understand what the transport manager has to go through as well.
Okay, and one of the topics that was talked about today in the webinar was around vehicle maintenance, and how much does poor maintenance contribute to operators actually being pulled into a public inquiry?
It's in a large number of public inquiries, but essentially the cause of it is poor management. Maybe that's poor management of the maintenance contractor, poor management of the driver walk around. Maybe a failure to keep an eye on your inspection intervals. As vehicles deteriorate or age, maybe you need to decrease your intervals. It's risk management.
And with the technology we have in place across, there's various different suppliers that allow for digital walk around checks nowadays. It's never been so easy to digitalize what we used to call an Ops 13 and DHL supply chain. How do you see, those businesses that are succeeding in terms of being compliant and their adoption of technology?
Use the tools. It's not for me as the regulator to say you must do it in this particular way. What I do say is you're required to have an effective driver defect reporting system. It's got to be written down, and you've got to manage it. So you've got to be observing what the quality of the walk round. Training your drivers to do it properly. How you get them to do that, it's whatever works best for your business. And and you're best placed to do that. Oh, you gave a good example of.
And I think one of the things that we talk about technology, and from my kind of operators days, is we've moved quite far on as an industry in terms of digitalization of transport was a huge, strategy and theme to our strategy at DHL Supply Chain. And there's a number of operators of all sizes that are really striving forward to digitalize their business to become more compliant, because it's become far more accessible in terms of that technology. And one of the things I wanted to understand from a topic that was talked about a lot today is around bridge strikes. And, from your point of view as Senior Traffic Commissioner and a Traffic Commissioner of a region, what are some of those practical takeaways around bridge strikes and, proactive planning from an operator's point of view that they should bring in as part of that approach? First
off, I think I prefer to talk about infrastructure strikes. We all use the shorthand of bridge strike, but it is about, it's not just bridges. Other things get hit. And that can help you with route planning. It can help you with, obviously, heights of bridges. You can incorporate height markers for both tractor unit and trailer into your processes. That can use technology, can be particularly helpful on that. But then there's the human factor, which is the driver element, and supporting them with proper route planning, proper sat navs that match the vehicle and the trailer.
Sure.
All of that can help. Guarding, geofencing, all of that can help, but it won't stop a driver making a poor decision. And so you've got to invest in both.
And do you find, and do you see more examples of where you've talked about driver and driver behaviour around, driver well-being being a factor to those incidents, that where our operators have had all of the technology, or they've put in, best practice, and they've still managed to have a infrastructure strike within their business? Do you think there's a greater focus within driver well-being moving forward from operators as well as the industry?
Yeah, I mean, one of the risks that we should be aware of, we've got an ageing driver workforce. A lot of work being done around the medical issues which we encounter with an ageing workforce. Some of them built like me, and that is a well-known risk. So we need to plan for that, but we need to support them. One of the topics came out during the webinar was we do walk rounds for our vehicles. We can a lot about our plant. How often are we doing that for our colleagues, our key asset, the driver?
Yes, well, again, it comes down to having a world-class debrief and brief of the driver. That's as a transport operator, it's their kind of only couple of touch points throughout the day with that driver whilst they're still on site.
It's a lonely job.
Yeah, massively. And I think that's the difference from my experience when we look at warehouse operations to transport operations. I have most of my assets within the box, within those four walls. When we look at transport operations, that touch point of a really, great brief of that driver out onto the route, so they are well prepared, but also that debrief, that opportunity to understand, from the KPIs or the telematic metrics that you've seen whilst they've been performing out on road, taking that as an opportunity to learn and feed that back into the rest of your business.
It's a risky business, being a transport operator. It's sophisticated. Nobody should ever underestimate what a transport operator is taking on. Yeah, I mean, you've got a huge investment in a piece of plant, which you have limited control of once it leaves your gates. Technology can help you monitor where it is, how fast it's going, whether the hours of the driver are within the requirements, but you're not in direct control. You need to sort of work out your effective control measures.
So one of my final questions was around, if you could redesign the operator compliance management from scratch, what would it look like? If you could...
I'd be out of a job because everyone would be compliant. You're never going to eliminate risk from really any industrial or work activity. We talked about human factors a lot during the webinar. It's very difficult to eliminate the risk associated with humans. So I guess it's setting up before you apply for your operator's license. Think about how you're going to manage those risks. What's involved? and repeatedly review your control measures, as you do with your warehouse, with your manufacturing, or anything, maybe even your office environment. Take that approach to transport.
So some quick fires. Biggest myth about traffic commissioner's role?
That we make it up. We're only able to do what the law allows us to do. I think sometimes we get questions from operators that I think they view us as sort of lawmakers. We're not. Parliament decides what's the law. We have to apply it, usually within a tribunal environment. So that's even more tricky, because you're having to make sure that the proceedings are fair and the rights of the operator, transport manager, driver are protected and respected.
One thing an operator could do tomorrow to improve their compliance? Manage
properly. Manage against the operator license requirements.
Bring it into reality.
Yeah, I mean, a number of times I've asked in public inquiries, so have you got a copy of the operator license requirements up on your notice board? Blank look. That sort of double-glazed stare.
And do you think that's a real easy practical takeaway, for people to start to become better educated on the O license? Just, having that review point within your team, your transport management team. I
think there are lots of reminders around there. Lots of, there are lots of sources of information, whether you're tapped into, Microlise or the trade bodies, the Office of the Traffic Commissioner sends out lots of reminders. It's just, using it. You take the full benefit of guidance. And I mean, the Guide to Maintaining Roadworthiness, what a fantastic resource that is. Just, it's going to be reissued. And in massive steps forward in terms of braking and lots of communication around it. Don't ignore these bits of advice.
So whilst I'm sensing frustration, what's your biggest frustration? What's your biggest frustration when you see operators failing? Might be some common mistakes that you wish all operators would just learn from.
I think how easy it is to avoid, except of course you've got the other business pressures. But brake testing. We've been banging on about that now for well over a decade, with good reason, because it has a direct effect on the road safety, the safety of other road users. And yet, don't view it as just a tick box exercise. All the requirements of the operator license system are not about tick boxing. They are about giving you information and the tools to manage your safety. What's the point of presenting something for a load and roller brake test if you don't know how to read it, for instance?
Yes.
Just an example.
So to wrap up from today's session, both the webinar and our podcast today, what would be your kind of key message to fleet operators about compliance and specifically culture, as we've just talked about?
At the risk of repeating myself, operator license is an asset, drivers are an asset, vehicles are an asset. So treat them like that. You've invested heavily in all of it. Protect your investment. Keep safe. Keep out of my way.
Well, thank you very much, Richard, for your time today. It's been a real pleasure to have you at both the Roundtable webinar as well as the podcast. I'd like to thank everybody for listening today, and that's everything for the podcast. Thank you very much, and stay tuned.